Hi everyone. This chapter discusses the stakeholders management in a hospitality project. When your project meets its objective and exceeds your stakeholders' expectations, it means your project is successful. You may now ask, who are the stakeholders? According to Freeman, in his popular strategic management books, he defined a stakeholders as any groups or individuals who can affect or is affected by the achievement of the organization objective. In project management case, some person either care about or have a vast interest in your projects. They are the people who are working with your projects. Therefore, there is a need to emphasize the interconnected relationship between a business and its customers, suppliers, employees, investors, communities, and others who have a stake in the organizations. Project leaders should identify all the stakeholders in the project. Failing to do so may lead to project failure. These figures show a sample of the project environments, including different kinds of stakeholders involved in a project. There is an internal and external stakeholders in a project. For example, the internal stakeholders include the project team, internal customers, the management, and so on. Externally, there are governments, contractors, and subcontractors, suppliers, external customers. A project supervisor or managers should always monitor the internal and external stakeholders. For example, if the supplier fails to deliver your crucial materials or ingredients on time, it will reduce the project schedule. Directors, presidents, divisions managers are the top management of the company. These people direct the strategies and developments of the organizations. On the other hand, the projects includes people dedicated to the projects. The project leader should all the time show the leadership and directions to support the team member to complete the projects. This requires a cooperation between the project leaders and the team member. Usually, the boss chooses what the project is and who can work with the project managers on projects. Therefore, keeping the manager informed will help to make sure that you get the essential resources to complete the projects. Peers are people who are at the same level in the organization as you and may or may not be on the project teams. Peer support is essential to build a relationship with other peers. Internal customers are people inside the organizations who are customers for projects that meet the needs of internal demands. It is important to build relationship with your internal customers because they can accept or reject your projects. The project managers must need to build a relationship with the customers and understand their needs at the early of the projects and should also keep the customer informed about the progress of the projects. On the other hand, external customers are the customers when projects could be marketed to outside customers. In the case of Toyota company, for example, the external customers will be the buyers of automobiles. Likewise, if you are managing a project at your company for Toyota company, they will be the external customers. It should be noted that project managers should always be aware of the regulated environments from local to international level. If a project is carried out in a foreign country, project managers must know the laws and regulations of the countries. Sometimes, external contractors or subcontractors will be appointed when an organization do not have the expertise or resources. The project managers should also know how to deal with and manage the contractors. And finally, it is essential to get a good supplier to supply and support the projects. A good supplier will deliver good quality materials on time at a reasonable cost. Failing to get a good supplier to result in project delay. Often, the project managers will have conflicts of interest with stakeholders. It is the project manager's responsibility to understand these conflicts and try to resolve them. Project managers have direct control over very few things. Therefore, their ability to influence others. Here are the few steps a good project politician should follow. Project managers must identify all the relevant stakeholders to consider their interest in the project. After that, the project manager should determine where the power lies and identify their goals. For example, are there any hidden agendas or goals that are not openly articulated? What are the goals of the stakeholders who hold the power? Project management must adapt its organizations and work processes to handle cultural difference. There are three major features of cultural differences that can affect a project. For example, communication is possibly the most visible manifestations of cultures. Sometimes, project managers miss cultural differences in communications in language, context, and candors. Language is undoubtedly the utmost obstacles to communications and influence project executions. Let us look at one example in the USA. On a major hotel construction project in South America that includes project teams leaders from 7 different countries. The greatest cultural differences that affect the project communications was between 2 project leaders from the United States. 2 team members, one from New Orleans and one from Brooklyn, have more difficulty communicating than team members from Lebanon and Australia. There are 60 tips for building strong relationships with each one using the following methods. It is important to conduct a stakeholders analysis or an assessment of a project's main participants and how the project will affect their problems and needs. Identify their characteristics and interests. Find out what motivates them, as well as what provokes them. Define roles and level of participations, and determine if there are conflicts of interest among groups of stakeholders. It is important to measure the degree to which stakeholders can influence the project. For example, the more influential a stakeholder is, the more a project managers will need their support. The managers may think about the questions, what is in it for them, when consider stakeholders. It is also necessary for managers to know stakeholders' needs or wants from the project. This allows the project managers to gauge his or her level of support. Then, it is necessary to balance support against influence. For example, is it important to have strong support from stakeholders with little influence? It is important to understand stakeholders' specific expectations. You can ask for clarifications when needed to be sure they are completely understood. Every stakeholder may have a different idea of what project success looks like. Therefore, Defining the success of the project determines the success or failure of a project. Furthermore, define the success early, include them in the objective to help ensure that all stakeholders will be supportive of the final outcome. As mentioned earlier, we should always keep stakeholders informed about the projects. However, the manager should not just inform them. The manager should ask stakeholders for their inputs. A manager must also build rapport with them by scheduling time for coffee, lunch, or quick meetings. A manager should also measure each stakeholder's capacities to participate and honor time constraints. It is important to send regular status updates to stakeholders. A manager should also hold project meetings as required. But don't let too much time pass between meetings. Be sure to answer stakeholder questions and email them promptly. A manager should also communicate regularly with stakeholders to update the latest progress. There are many tools to help stakeholders management. For example, power interest matrix, corporations threat matrix, communication plan, and etc. The stakeholders analysis templates has 6 fields plus a table. The lines ask for a few things. For example, the project scope, key messages, communications goals, communication teams, project teams, and other stakeholders. Then, there is a table with 7 columns where you can track the communications plan. Therefore, the columns header of this table are communications dates, deliverables, audience, message, actions items, or FYI for your informations, plans, and finally, the status. In summary, it is important to identify who is the stakeholders in a project, since managing stakeholders is a key success factor for projects. The manager must pay more attention. A manager should also analyze stakeholders' interests and level of influence and build correlations. And finally, a manager should always communicate with the stakeholders to make sure that the project is smooth and complete on time. That's all for today. Thank you for listening.